on the D podcast, episode 2. So, this is a new thing. I'm excited to dive into this podcast and explore and talk to people who are either new to Detroit or who are from Detroit and they left, came back, or people who are visiting. And I want to highlight the people that's doing stuff in the city and just highlight their experience and what they up to. So, my guest today on episode 2, I got DJ Blondie, right? And DJ Blondie, I met actually when I was in a club and I walked in and we was at Double O and I heard this music and I'm like, yo, these drops is crazy. Who is this? And then I look over and she like over there sweating, mixing it up. And I'm like, yo, she fire. And I'm like, I got to get to know her. So here she is. So DJ
What's
Blondie,
up, guys?
welcome to the podcast.
Thanks
So
for
look,
having me.
man, look, the first thing is like, where you from actually? Where you
From
from?
the Philippines originally.
Philippines.
Born and raised.
Okay.
Philippines, born and raised, and then I moved to South Florida when I was about 13 or 14. Yeah.
That's crazy. I would have never thought like, okay, blonde DJ from the Philippines
Yeah.
and then moved to Florida, like all
Right.
this culture, right?
Right.
Like, and I'm sure like from, first sight, people don't always see that, right? And that's the thing about like culture and music and experience, you know? That's crazy. Never would have thought that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a really fun ride. It's been a really fun ride. Yeah.
So what was it like though being born in the Philippines though?
Oh God, that's a really good question. See, like growing up in the Philippines, so I don't look Filipino, right?
Mm-hmm.
So growing up, like I went to a school that was like started from the first grade all the way up to college, and besides my sister and maybe a couple of other people, I was the only like blonde, light skinned girl or person in the entire school. So growing up, like that was just my norm. I really didn't think that I looked any different. Like I was just part of the culture. I have so many fond memories. I have a lot of really strong roots in the Philippines. It's my home.
Yeah. Do you speak any like the language at all?
Yeah, I
you
speak.
do? Oh,
I speak.
I didn't even know that. I should have asked you that
I
before.
speak a little Tagalog, but I speak even better Ilonggo, which is one of the dialects. And there's hundreds of dialects, right? But I speak pretty good Ilonggo.
Say something.
Ano, kumusta ka?
That sounds like como estas. What is
Kumusta
that?
ka means how are you? Or, then you can say mabute. That means
Mabuti,
I'm
okay.
doing good.
Okay,
Yeah,
I believe you.
yeah,
I believe
yeah.
you now. Okay, I believe
I'll
you.
save the curse words for later.
That's what's up. That's crazy. And you said you traveled to like how many different like places, different like states, different cities?
Yeah, so many different cities and different parts of the world over the past, 20 years, I'd say, give or take. Yeah.
So what was like one of the highlights? What would you say like this city was fun, like this was a great experience, or like a memory that you would look back on from traveling?
There's so many, and there's probably a handful that I can't even think of off the top of my head.
That's crazy.
But
Like passport stamped up?
yeah, I love DJing in Southeast Asia, especially like open air venues. There's something of the energy of that, like an open air festival. I mean, I love clubs, but something outside when everybody's collectively together and sharing that experience is just like it feels euphoric for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long you been doing this though?
Since I was 15, so maybe 20 years or so.
And you just developed a passion. Like how did that start though? Because I started doing what I do at like, 11,
Right.
12. But how did it start for you?
Well, it's a long story, but it started for me. I've been incredibly connected to music my whole life. And I'd say it all started when I was like 5 or 6 years old with music, right? I remember I was in the Philippines and my mom was playing, I think she was there, I think it was her. She was playing some tracks from Madame Butterfly. And I'll never forget, the music impacted me so much that I was laying on the floor and I had my hand over my face and I was sobbing.
Yeah.
I was crying because I was so incredibly moved by the music, or not even just that, what it made me feel. I felt all these feelings that I've never felt before. And I was a child. I didn't understand it. My mom tapped me and she said, she used to call me Cara Mia. She said, are you okay? What's wrong? And I said, the music's just so beautiful. And that's when my love for music started. And so I was, graduated high school a little bit earlier. So I was playing my guitar and my piano, and I was a vocalist, right? soul singer, and I would play for, random coffee shops and happy hours in South Florida.
Yeah.
And I met one of the guys from Frankie Valley and the Four Seasons. And he's like, "Oh, we should get together so you can sing and we can collaborate." And through him,
You sing too?
yeah,
Okay, bet. I didn't even know that.
yeah. Through him, I met a guy named Carson who ran this events company in South Florida. And here I'm 16, I barely have a driver's license. And he's like, "Hey, do you want to DJ for these private events?" And I said, "Sure." And I'll never forget my first ever gig. And like, I didn't know what I was doing. There were like CDJs, I think we had CDs. And this is back when I was doing it with Booza, my ex, who we started DJing together. And he brought CDs. I think he grabs them from his dad or something.
Yeah.
And at the end of the party, well, in the middle of the party, we had Carson had an emergency and he left. And he left us with everything. Meanwhile, this is our first ever gig that we've ever done. We didn't know what we were doing. But they had such an amazing time. And they left us a tip. So we got back in the car and we opened up the envelope. And there was $1,000. Now, no, as a 16-year-old, to get a $1,000 tip, I was like, wow, this is amazing. I can do music and get paid for it. And that's when it all started. I remember DJing like my first residency at a college bar. They did like beer pong on Thursdays, and I was barely 18. We did that for a couple of years. And that's where it all started. And I started my first tour outside of the U.S. when I was about 18.
Okay, so you do this for real. That's the thing, like,
Yeah.
and that's the big thing of like any craft I've learned in entertainment. Like, if you do this and you do it for real, that's how you get that respect. So that's what's up. Like, when I heard them drops, I was like, who the hell? Like what? Because a lot of DJs, I'd be like, man, I ain't feeling this. And then like I heard that, I was like, yo, let's go up to the booth and see who this is. Then we got behind the booth and like we was all in that lit. Like, that was fire.
So fun.
So like even getting that first 1,000 at 16, that's enough to encourage somebody to be like, all right, I'm gonna keep going,
Yeah.
And then like you had all these different experiences traveling around the world, and like Florida. What brought you to Detroit though? Because that's a different vibe,
Yeah. What brought me to Detroit, and here we go again. It's a long story, but I'll try to keep it short. I really owe it all to COVID and the pandemic. I was so dedicated to my career. My career was my relationship. I nurtured the hell out of my career. And when COVID happened, and before COVID hit, I was really thinking hard and clear about where I wanted to relocate, because I didn't want to be in Florida anymore. That chapter for me, I knew was over. So when COVID hit, it allowed me to nurture my personal relationships.
Yeah, facts.
And it made me, realize and figure out what is important to me.
That downtime is everything.
Yes.
During COVID, that downtime, you think like personal life, like where do I want to be? Like I've heard people say they moved to cities just because like, oh, my sister was here or my friend or whatever, right? Just because you want to be surrounded by community, right? Because
Exactly.
COVID like exposed that for real.
Exactly. And, as much anxiety that I had from COVID, because I'm like, oh my God, where's my next gig gonna be? Like, what's gonna happen? I was so used to like going and going and going. A part of me was relieved, right? So here I am. I'm like, okay, am I gonna live in Tokyo? Am I gonna be based out of the Philippines? Am I gonna live in LA, New York? I was so open to the idea. I just didn't know where I wanted to call home next.
Yeah.
So I ended up reconnecting with somebody that I had met 5 years prior during a couple of shows down in Key West, Florida. And I nurtured that relationship, and we fell in love. And he had to be based in Detroit. And I was so open to moving anywhere. I took this massive leap of faith. I didn't know anything about Detroit.
Yeah.
So that's what brought me here. That's what brought me here. And it's so funny, too, because I remember I was on my way to Southeast Asia like 10 years prior, and had a layover at the Detroit airport. And I was outside, and it was raining, and it was gloomy. And I'll never forget this. I remember thinking, I could never live here.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, I couldn't be happier to be living in Detroit.
A lot of people think that though, because it is a different vibe. Like anytime I go to like LA, Miami, somewhere tropical,
Yeah.
come back here, it's like bandos, dark clouds. But it's something about that grind, that grit, that hustle that makes people work hard and like, keep the relationship strong. And
Yeah.
it keeps people like really like grinding and like continuing to go. It's like inspiring in a way. You know what I mean? Because you never get comfortable. It keeps you working hard.
Yeah.
So that's what's up. Any like cool people you would say you met while you was here? Like any artists or like whoever,
God, I've met so many people, so many different types of artists, whether they're painters or musicians or DJs. There's just like a massive amount of creatives in this city, which is why, like, thinking back, I was trying to figure out where I wanted to move. All I knew was that I wanted to surround myself with other people who were, one, creative, two, supportive, and I really was craving a sense of community that I just wasn't getting in Florida at that time.
Yeah.
So there's so many, and every single person that I've met has inspired me and really opened up my world. And at the end of the day, I think really makes me a better DJ because it brings a lot of inspiration.
Yeah, because Detroit is one of those places that's like filled with art. You know what I mean? So it's the grit and the art that come. It's like, you can't really compare it to New York, but you think about the art of New York because of the grit and the grind.
Right.
It keeps you like creative, So yeah. So what about like, okay, you really know your craft, but on the outside, most people would be like, oh, here's this blonde DJ, right? And you named yourself DJ Blondie. So is it like
somebody gave me that name? I think.
Really? How did that happen?
Right.
How did that happen?
So I thought it happened one way until I had a conversation with somebody that was there while it happened. And apparently somebody gave me that name. I don't remember who, and it just stuck. And I was 15 years old.
You've been blonde since 15?
I've been blonde since 15.
That's crazy.
I was born blonde. I've always been blonde. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if I've ever seen
Blondie.
somebody that was born blonde. Like, I don't know nothing about that, but
I've
okay.
been blonde my whole life. I mean, yeah.
Okay, for
Blondie.
sure. All right, Beth. So what is it like being like, okay, you in a male-dominated industry. Like, do you think it's harder to prove yourself, or is it like, do you think your work speak for yourself, or what is that like,
Both. So I feel like being a female in a male-dominated industry has me working a little bit harder. But I don't mind that.
Yeah.
Because I love a good challenge and I work really well under pressure.
Yeah.
I feel like there is a stigma with female DJs. Like I've been harassed before. There's this guy I remember like on the internet, and he hit up all of my social media platforms and he would just rip me apart for no reason. I didn't know this guy. Probably just because I'm a female and maybe I have blonde hair or I have a certain look. That maybe sometimes people don't take me as seriously and until I actually start getting to work, because I take my craft so seriously. And it pushes me to be better because of that.
Yeah. And some people will like use it as like, oh, I can't do this, but you use it as like, all right, I'll take the challenge and it make me better.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I said, I don't really get impressed when I go out with the music and the DJs.
Really?
But like real talk, I was recording videos like, yo, them mixes and them drops crazy. And then when I came over, you had the mixes playing in the kitchen. I'm like, yo, she really studying this. This is like life for her. You know what I mean?
It's a craft. Yeah, I think that when artists get comfortable, right? I don't ever want to get comfortable. I feel like there's a constant opportunity for growth until the day that I die. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I'll never get comfortable or complacent at all. Yeah. I'm constantly trying to grow in all aspects, musically, personally. And yeah, I'm constantly working towards that. So but even that guy that like would harass me, he'd drop comments like, oh, her equipment's not even on, like I'm faking it. Yeah. Like, people are just constantly like trying to rip me apart.
Yeah. That's a big thing in the DJ world. Oh, he's not really mixing. And I know there's some people that do that. But I hate when they say that about my favorite DJs, like Diplo's and like all that. Yeah. Oh, he's not really mixing or whatever. Like,
yeah, internet trolls, right?
Yeah. So, like, who's somebody who inspired you, though? Like, in the music world, DJ world, or whatever?
So, in the DJ, it's hard when you ask me the question, like, who inspires me musically? It's hard.
Or in general. It can be like...
In general.
You know, yeah, go in general. Let's go in general.
Because there's a lot of music that... It's just, I'm so open to different kinds of music that for me, if if it makes me feel a certain kind of way, I don't care if it makes me feel sad. Like if it impacts me in that way, I'm there for it. Whether it's Sinatra or Biggie, like it doesn't matter to me. I take inspiration from all of that. But what inspires me and actually helps and drive me as an artist is I think about the strong women in my life.
Yeah.
My great grandmother, who is just incredible, and she had my grandmother, and she was one of 14 children, and my grandmother inspires me so much. That's why I changed my last name to Stark. That was her last name.
Yeah.
She, at the time, this was, I think, she was in her 60s. She had been in the sugarcane industry, and back then, you know, in the Philippines, to have a woman speak out and be as loud as she was and fierce says a lot. And whenever I get in my head or I get insecure, I think about her. And she really put herself out there. She was so fierce. And she was one of the most successful and best farmers in the Philippines.
Yeah.
And then when she was in her 60s, she became congresswoman.
Yeah.
She was just bad ass. And then I take inspiration from my mother, who lived her life exactly the way she wanted to. You know, she built this beautiful sailboat with her own hands from scratch.
Yeah.
Sailed all over the world, performed, sang, played the guitar. Like that inspires me. Those women inspire me.
Yeah. And that's why I had to switch the question, because I'm like, people ask me that too, and I'm like, it's not always the artist or like the people you look up to, but I say for me, it was people in my neighborhood that was like, I want to help you make it out of here, to see something beyond this, right?
Yeah.
Beyond what we going through every day. And sometimes they're the most inspirational people who not on Instagram, right? The people who paved the way for us, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So yeah, and that's like one thing I like to say. So I want to pivot a little bit. Being in a nightlife, right? Where there's like fun, there's drinks, and times are changing, right? To where I always try to offer, you know, tips to guys that's watching. You know, I'm like 80%, 90% guys that watch me. So I think for me, a lot of guys get it wrong when it comes to like approaching clubs. We spend a lot of times in clubs, like as entertainers. What can guys learn from your opinion of like about nightlife, if they see like how to become the guy that is like attractive in that nightlife scene, or is it even in a nightlife scene that they should be worried about that? Or like when a guy comes into a club and, you know, he wants to feel like he can stand out or attract a woman or whatever, like what can that guy do from your opinion, you know?
That's a really good question.
Because you talked about how like guys, like it's like harass and weird, and I'm sure you get that too when you DJing, and
Yeah,
it's like,
especially when there's alcohol involved,
Yeah.
and like maybe you're not conducting yourself in the way you normally would outside of the club. I think the club brings a lot of confidence, right? You call it liquid courage.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, remind me the question again. The question is,
What can a guy do to stand out
what
and
can a guy
become
do
that?
to
Yeah.
stand out? Okay, I'm gonna speak for myself, and maybe I can speak for other women that I've talked to in the past. For a man to stand out is one, I think that there lacks like vulnerability when men can be vulnerable, and women too, right? Like when we can be vulnerable and drop into our hearts and speak from our truth,
Yeah.
you can't go wrong. One, two, consistency.
Yeah.
Consistency is so important. Like you don't want a guy, if I was dating somebody and he was messaging me and then all of a sudden he dropped off and there was like a sense of inconsistency, that would raise red flags for me. You know, and I have girlfriends too sometimes ask like, how do I know he's into me? I said, oh, you'll know.
Yeah.
You know, my husband, when he wanted to see me, drove 12 hours throughout the night and didn't sleep. Like you'll know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So consistency and just a form of connection, you know, and just be real. Yeah.
And what about like women? Like what can a woman do, a young woman that watch? Like, you know, there are like a lot of young women that follow me as well. What could they do to attract the guys that, you know, that they want, or the guys that's good for them, you know, in your opinion?
Be the person that you want to date. And that's how I feel, and that's what I think, and that's what I believe is effective. Become the person you want to date. Become the person you would like to attract into your life.
Yeah.
Really.
Like if you like want somebody who's fit, healthy, like someone who values
Then
like
be fit and healthy, or
Yeah.
strive towards that.
Yeah.
You know, and like nurture that part, because
mental health,
naturally,
mental health as well. Yeah, that's
everything,
big. Yeah,
mental health, physical health. Life is all about balance. You know, I like to have fun too, but I make sure I take care of my physical and mental health. But yeah, just be the person you want to date.
all right, for
And
sure,
you'll attract that naturally, I think, into your existence.
for sure. And like, all right, so what's one thing that you would say like overall goal? Like when you look like, what's your overall goal that you want to, to accomplish, that you want people to see, and something that you overall want to do, like with your life? Like, what's the overall goal and like mission?
I don't even know if I have an overall goal, right? Like we all, and I have dreams and I'm striving towards them. But at the end of the day, I do what I do because it makes me happy. And I do what I do because I want to make other people happy, even
Yeah,
if
yeah.
it's just for a night.
Yeah.
Because it makes a difference. And
Yeah.
that's really how I feel. And my goal is to continue to work on my craft, to grow, and to do better and be better than I did the last time I played.
For sure. Yeah.
So some people will ask me like, "Oh, like who's your competition?" And I say myself, because I want to be better than who I was and what I did the last time.
Yeah, I agree.
And that
'Cause-
is like
yeah.
ultimate for
Because
me.
if you comparing it like you top somebody numbers, and it's like, okay, like what's next? You feel me? So like
Exactly.
being better than yourself, so like every day, that's like a big
Yeah,
goal.
it makes me think like there was this competition that I was a part of, and it was called Queen of Mashups, and it was held
Yeah.
in Bombay, in India, and I worked so hard because I really wanted to place. So the first year that I played, I didn't even place. And I was like, all right, what went wrong? What is my audience there? Because I was practicing like it was like the Red Bull 3 style, right? No, this is Bollywood, right? So I worked on it, and I came back the next year, even though my family they were trying to convince me to stay home for Thanksgiving. I said, no, I need to do this. I need to
Yeah.
do this for myself. I need to do it for the experience and for my own growth. And I came back the next year and I won, and I took first place.
Yeah.
And I took home the award, actually back to the hotel room that night, and I felt nothing.
Yeah.
It was such a weird feeling because I'm like, this is something that I feel like I worked so hard for, and I felt absolutely nothing. Not because it didn't mean anything. It meant so much to me. I was so happy. But it's because my mindset was, all right, what's next?
Yeah.
That's over. What's next? And that's why I felt nothing.
Yeah.
I felt the reward. I felt, satisfied. And then moving on. So
I will say, like, the thing about Detroit, though, like, the more you spend time here, the more you see that what people go through on a daily and what it's like, and riding through and seeing, like, the city recovering. What I like about the city is when I come back here, it keeps me grounded. I got back from New York, Vegas, came straight back to Detroit, and got straight back to work, because it was like, you come back and you see, like, okay, back to normal, regular life. You know what I mean? Like, it's not this big city that's fully developed and on its feet yet. We on our way, but when you come back here, like, it keeps you motivated. You know what I mean?
that's true, and that's one of the things that I love so much about the city. And I'll fight for Detroit all day. I love Detroit, is because there is this hustle and this grind behind the people that are here and the people that choose to be here.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly inspiring,
Yeah.
And I even said, I talked to my husband about it when we first moved here. I said, I don't know why, but I feel like moving to Detroit is going to make me a better artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Because of that, there's so much inspiration.
What's one thing you would say, like, okay, compared to, like, other cities, other big cities that, Detroit, like, when it comes to the nightlife, the club scene, like, yo, if we had this, it would bring us to another level. You know what I mean? Because I've been to other clubs, and I'm like, dang, out of state, and this is crazy. So, like, I mean, we got a few here that's like, okay, this is banging, but is it more like clubs? Is it more like, clubs working together, the owners, or more artists, or like what? When you see, like, the scene of, like, the parties, the nightlife, and all that, what's something that we could learn here from other states?
Something that we could learn. That's a really good question. So one thing that I noticed is I don't feel like, based on what I know now, I don't feel like there's a ton of like open format venues around here.
Yeah.
But then again, like there's a ton of venues that are like just in random warehouses. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
is
right?
it? Are we like in
It'll be
Berlin
an
in the
abandon.
90s?
It'll be an abandon
I know.
factor. Yeah.
But I love that so much.
What's
And I feel
open
like
format?
that's open format is like it's what I do, right? Unless I'm specifically catering to a certain venue or crowd or city. Open format is like, all right, cool, I'm playing hip hop and transitioning to house and then transitioning
Okay.
to trap. Open
Facts,
format.
yeah.
Maybe I'm dropping in some rock and like
Yeah.
interesting shit. So
Yeah, you right though, cause like even for me, like I'm a diverse like guy. Like even though I grew up in the streets, like I like a lot of different types of music, and you're
Yeah.
right about that. Like sometimes I get bored when it's the same thing over and over, and I'm like, yo, let's
Right.
slide to the next
Be
club.
repetitive, right.
It'd be like that a lot of
But
times.
I think at
like,
the end of the day, good music is good music.
For real though, for
right?
real, yeah.
Like it doesn't matter what genre. If it's a vibe and people are like having an amazing time, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
As long as it's good.
For sure.
Yeah.
What was something you want to leave the people with when you want to say like, okay, this the people that's watching. I want to leave them with this, and I want them to like know this. What's the final message you say for
That's
the
a
people?
really good question. I feel like you're putting me on the spot.
Say something inspirational. This is
Something inspirational.
or something about
okay.
you want people to know. Like this is it. You know.
Say something inspirational. So I would say
What's something about you want the people to know? You know, to end with.
there's so much. Like there's too many layers of myself, I feel like, to share before we end this. All I can say is that what's worked for me in my life is to trust my intuition, strive to be a better version of myself, of yourself than you were the day before. Be kind to others and do what you love and enjoy life because it's really short.
Exactly. It really is.
And then share your passion, share what you love with other people.
And that's what I always say. Like every day, become your better self, and then you attract what you put out there. Like real talk. So
Naturally, right?
yeah,
It just comes into your existence.
for sure. You know?
Yeah.
So one thing I will say, DJ Blondie's closet is inspiring. So listen, I'm building a block right now, but when I continue to build and I get my personal, newly built home, I need a closet like that. Real talk. I need a piece of art from you or something. You gotta hook me up.
It
with
would
some
be an
art.
honor to create a piece of art for you.
Bet, let's
which
get it.
I made this.
I know. Hey, no, like I thought this was like one of the ones you buy. Like real talk. Like I'm not a liar. Like that's one thing people like about me, but they hate about me. Like I be like blunt,
I love it forever. Take honesty over anything.
Well, all right, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure y'all like, subscribe, and I'll see y'all
Thank
again
you.
soon.
Bye, guys.